Thank you for staying with us. We turn our attention to the recent by-election outcomes and what they signal as we look ahead to future elections in Nigeria, from shifting party strength to voter turnout and electoral reforms. I mean, there's plenty to unpack tonight. What do the results really mean? Are they just one-off wins and losses, or signs of what's to come in future elections? Pastor Sly Ezelkenwa, National Chairman, All Progressives Grand Alliance, joins me on the program tonight. Pastor Sly is the youngest national chairman in Nigeria. So let's confirm if it's still the youngest national chairman. Good evening to you, Pastor Sly. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Good evening, my dear sister Olajumoke.
Thank you.
It's good to be with you again.
Thank you, and it's good to see you again. So are you still the youngest national chairman at the moment?
I prefer not to comment on that.
No. Talk to us, because I would really love to know. So my major question would be: Do you enjoy being the youngest national chairman? Do you believe your age gives you a unique advantage or some perspective in Nigerian politics?
Well, for me, I am one person that I can say that I didn't really set out to maybe make that record as the youngest national chairman of a political party in Nigeria. Before now, I was a member of the National Executive Committee of APGA, then by extension the National Working Committee, in my role as a National Legal Advisor. And then, well, fortunately or quite fortuitously, the delegates of the party at the last National Convention decided that the best bet for the party is to go the way of young people. And I think that decision by the delegates of the party and the members of the organizing committee of the last National Convention were particularly influenced by the outcome of the 2023 general election, where we saw from the demographics and then from the statistics, it seemed that there was quite an increased interest and participation among young people aged, say, between 18 and about maybe 39, 49 years. And from the record, I think they constituted about 60-something% of the voters during the 2023 presidential election. And so for me, I think it comes with immense responsibility. We belong to a country where most of the young people come out and say that we've not really been given our due share and due participation and due role in governance. And so I feel this weight of responsibility on me, knowing fully well that I carry the hopes and aspirations of thousands of young people, because I see myself, any wrong decision I take influences the chances of millions of young people out there. And so, well,
and that's why we really want
to play that role, and we believe.
Right, and that's why I wanted you to talk about it.
Continue to soldier on.
Right, and that's why I wanted you to talk about it, because at this time, when we're begging young Nigerians to join politics and get interested in governance, when young Nigerians see people like you, they get motivated. But of all the unseen challenges you must have faced, I mean, due to your age in such a high-ranking political position, I mean, I'm aware of the battle you had to face with some older men who thought you were too young to occupy such position. But since that became a thing of the past, how have you been able to, bridge the gap between the younger generation in your party and the political system in Nigeria?
Yes, for us, and for me particularly, it is a question of responsibility. We as young people has been at the forefront of the complaint against the leadership of the country, saying that we've not really been given our due share or our due accolades, as the case may be, or our due responsibilities in governance. And so for me, I think I must pay immense tribute to the national leader of our party and the governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo, who, of course, if you look at the preponderance of the members of his cabinet, you will see quite a number of young people. In fact, if you recall, I was a member of that cabinet, and at the time I got on that cabinet as a commissioner, I was less than 40 years. And in that cabinet, we had close to about 30 to 40% of the commissioners in that cabinet are people aged between, say, 34, 35 to about 45 years. And that speaks to the kind of leadership the Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo has breathed into the affairs of Anambra State, and by extension, APGA as a political party. And then the point you made about trying to interact with members of the older generation and all whatnot, I think basically this is just a question of responsibility. The roles of the national chairman are clearly defined in the Constitution. And when we came into office, knowing fully well the enormity of the responsibility on us, we developed an agenda or a manifesto which I crafted and which we christened the Drive APGA agenda. You know, and that has been the stanchion of our administration and our leadership of APGA. And by the Drive agenda, we tried to study the party, at least in the past decade or 2 decades, try to see some of the issues that have been bedeviling the party. And then we came up with that acronym DRIVE, which stands for discipline, rebranding and repositioning the party, then inclusive leadership, visibility in terms of trying as much as possible to engage with the media and other sectors of the society to make the party more visible, and then as much as possible to expand the party. From inception, of course, APGA was at inception named majorly as a party that was more or less attracted to the majority of the Southeasterners or the Igbos. And so we say that there is no way we can at least achieve our aim within the context of trying to improve on the fortunes of our country if we stay confined to our region. And so we felt that part of our agenda was to try as much as possible to expand the party beyond the shores of the Southeast and see how we can have a handshake across the Niger and have other progressive-minded people around the country come on board the party. And I think to a reasonable extent we've been able to achieve much of that. There is still much to be done, quite enormous job to be done, but I can tell you every day, as the day breaks and as the day this thing goes, we try as much as possible to continue to push that agenda.
All right. So would you consider running for an elective office in the future?
I'm a lawyer. I think I prefer to see myself as a lawyer, more as a professional than as a politician who is ready to get into contest.
I know you're deceiving me.
Having
Barrister Sly, I know you're deceiving me.
No. I must be very clear.
Okay.
The responsibility of leadership rests on young people like me. And if need be, if we see areas that need our services, as a young person or someone who believes he has something to offer, I don't think it will be in my best interest maybe to shy away from such responsibility. I am a Nigerian, and God created me a Nigerian, and there is a reason or a purpose God created me a Nigerian. Even in my role now as a national chairman, I'm trying as much as possible to see how I can improve the fortunes of the country through having effective leadership in the party. And let me tell you this, and I hold this with immense responsibility. Most times, we try to focus our attention on the leaders of the country, people in various political offices or people in governance, while neglecting political parties. If you study the trajectory of our laws, looking at the Electoral Act and the Constitution, you will agree with me that there is no way anybody can get onto the saddle of leadership if it does not go through political parties. So if you want to reform the leadership of the country, if you want to reform or if you want to get it right with those in various spheres of governance, then the starting point or where beam light or where you're searching your light has to be political parties. If you reform political parties, especially make sure that political parties have what we call internal democracy. Make sure that political parties have a clearly defined way of bringing out responsible individuals to run for various offices. Then you would have solved the problem of the country by almost 60%.
I think you made a fair point, but you know, let's move on to issues of elections. And I've been wanting to ask you about your general assessment of the outcome of this just concluded by-election. Your candidate, Emmanuel Nwachukwu in Anambra South, won with 90,000 votes, over 90,000 votes. But ADC's Chidi Amango says that by-election violated electoral rules and guidelines, is alleging that the tax meant for ADC ward and local government collation agents were deliberately withheld. Did APGA in any way, compromise the integrity of the election process in Anambra South?
I think your question is rather bifurcated, but I'll try as much as possible to attempt a fair answer. I was in Anambra during the election, and not just that I was in Anambra, I actually played a role in that election. I was the constituency collation agent for my party in Anambra South. And to that extent, I played a major role in trying as much as possible having some sort of interactions with most of our agents at various levels, from the polling unit to the ward collation agent to the local government collation agent, and ultimately at the constituency collation center at Nnewi. And I can tell you that for us in APGA, and for majority of people that participated at that election, especially those that came out to vote, I don't think we could have seen a more peaceful election than what we saw on the August 16th, last Saturday. And I don't say this because my candidate won. We are one of those, at least I'm one of those that have, for a reasonable length of time, advocated for a fair review of the electoral process in terms of ensuring the integrity of the process, in terms of ensuring the sanctity of the ballot. And INEC, once again, came through for Nigerians. I'm one of those that has not, personally hidden my admiration for the current INEC under the leadership of Professor Mahmood Yakubu, in terms of the innovations and the improvement and the technological advancement that we've seen with our electoral process, beginning particularly with the introduction of the bimodal voter accreditation system, and then generally, if you check the trajectory of, first of all, starting with the deployment of materials from the CBN in Oka, down to the movement of the materials to all the local governments, the racks and the super racks, and ultimately to the polling unit, it was done orderly and coordinated. And ultimately, the voting was peaceful. There was no harassment, apart from some instances that I'm going to say probably in the course of the program. One isolated instance somewhere.
You can say them now, but you can say them now, Barrister Sly, because it's popular for accused political parties to become defensive and probably laugh it off when grave allegations of this nature come to play. He didn't stop there. He didn't stop there. Kindly hold on, sir. He didn't stop there. He described what happened as not clerical oversight, but active sabotage. It says it was deliberate and defiant orchestration by APGA. And there's a possibility, because you also talk about instances, there's a possibility that you also experienced this. It says the list of polling agents circulated in Ihiala, for instance, was doctored and did not correspond with the authentic one. The authentic one ADC submitted for upload on the Independent National Electoral Commission portal. So are you aware of any incidents involving APGA agents or candidates that could lend credence to these accusations?
The accusation by the ADC candidate, of course, has to be an issue between him and INEC. Ordinarily, by INEC rules and regulations, political parties' agents are uploaded to a dedicated portal. We were given our access code as a political party that is participating in the election. And mind you, this election was not just conducted in Anambra, it was conducted in 16 other constituencies across the country. We were given our access code to upload the list of our agents. In fact, not just agents, because anybody who is quite familiar with the mode of operation of INEC now is that everything about elections from INEC are uploaded to INEC portal, from the nomination of candidates down to the upload of agents, even observers. So if, for example, you have an organization and you feel you want to play a role as an observer, you have to go to a dedicated portal, write your application, and make your upload. So for us in APGA, we never had that issue. We duly uploaded or complied with the time frame given by INEC for us to upload our agent. And I think on the eve of the election, we proceeded to the INEC headquarters in Oka, and we collected all our agent stack intact, from the polling unit to the collation center to the collation agent, and then ultimately the local government collation agent and myself. And so for us in APGA, we never had any issue. And there is no way I can stay here and begin to say whether there is any iota of credibility in the report by the ADC candidate or not. That is an issue he has to sort with INEC. But I can tell you, most times the INEC I know, especially the EPM and the ICT department, is very efficient. I, for one, I interact with INEC ICT department very well, Of course, I interact with the INEC EPM department, which is the department that is generally responsible for interactions between INEC and political parties. And I've never had any issue. Most times, more often than not, most of such issues are from the political parties. There have been instances where political parties do not comply with the format of upload of agents. I've seen that happen severally. And at the end of the day, they try to pass the buck rather than accept responsibility for their inadequacies. In some cases, they don't even upload at all, or they may stay there, and the time frame, because INEC releases timeline for elections. From day one, if INEC publishes a time notice of election, you will see their timetable / schedule of activities for all activities concerning the election. And so I'm not going to stay here and say what the issue was with the ADC. That is their own cup of tea. For us in APGA, we duly comply with all the laid down regulations and requirements stipulated by the Commission. And we have no complaint whatsoever against the Commission.
I mean, anyone watching would say, well, even if there were issues, at the end of the day, it favored APGA. So, but you had just said that the issue, you should sort out these issues with INEC, implying that ADC does not have enough grassroots presence in Anambra State to seriously compete with dominant parties like your party, PDP, and APC. But some would, say Ralph Nwosu is from Anambra State, and many expected that to some extent his influence should have spoken loudly. There's also Akachukwu Sullivan. There's Patrick Obiaya. I mean, with ADC struggling electorally, is there room for them in Anambra's evolving political space?
I can tell you without any fear of equivocation, there is no political party with any structure anywhere in Anambra known as ADC. I can tell you that. Even the so-called candidate that you just mentioned is unknown in Anambra. In fact, the first time I heard that name was just before this election that we heard of Barrister Anambra, who, of course, by implication is my learned colleague. And so for us, of course,
you must have heard of,
you must have
heard of Ralph Nwosu.
Of course. Ralph Nwosu is my brother, is my senior brother. He is from Oka South, and I know him as a national chairman of ADC. That's all I know about ADC. And any structure about that exists barely on paper and nowhere in Anambra State. So for me, it's not for me to devote or waste unnecessary time on activities concerning ADC as a political party. They know that they don't exist, they don't have any structure in Anambra, and that was actually shown during the last elections.
All right.
In fact, if you look at the result of the election in Anambra South, the ADC candidate polled less than 2% of the total vote cast in Anambra South.
All right.
And even his own local government and his community, he couldn't amass as much as 12% of the vote cast. So that tells you the intensity of the so-called structure that they have.
All right, Barrister Sly.
They don't exist anywhere in Anambra.
All right. Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation. But it's important to say that this conversation continues on our other platforms when we return. Please stay with us. Barrister Sly Ezeokenwa, National Chairman, All Progressives Grand Alliance, is on the program tonight as we discuss by-election outcomes and future elections. Thank you so much for staying with us, Barrister Ezeokenwa. You say ADC does not exist in Anambra State, and while we were on that break, I was wondering if ADC's weak performance is a reflection of voter loyalty to APGA or just general disinterest in alternative parties, because your people won't stop boasting that APC is just a branch of APGA in Anambra, and I find it very audacious when you tell me no true son of Anambra State would vote for a party like APC. Yet, your governor, Professor Charles Soludo, won't stop parading Aso Rock. He's been there twice. And in his words, these are progressives working together. It has even gone further by endorsing Mr. President for second term. You may need to speak to this contradiction between APGA's grassroots anti-APC rhetoric and Governor Charles Soludo's recent alignment with the APC-led presidency.
I think you've raised quite a number of issues there, but then I'll try as much as possible and dissect them one by one.
All right.
First of all, in Anambra State, APGA is a movement. It is a movement anchored on the purple. It is a grassroots movement. In Anambra, APGA is somewhat of a religion. you must have seen the aphorism somewhere that Anambra is APGA, or Anambra is APGA land. And this has, in fact, this started in 2003 when the people of Anambra State trooped out en masse in 2003 to elect the first ever APGA governor. Incidentally, after the election, we had some bit of some misfortune with the declaration of another person who was not the person that was popularly elected, and which ultimately culminated in a long, tortuous battle that finally in 2006, we had our first governor, Mr. Peter Obi, sworn in. And then after Mr. Peter Obi, we had Governor Willie Obiano and now Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo. And there is one thing unique about what APGA has been able to offer Anambra. It is the fact that from beginning or inception of an APGA administration in Anambra State from now, the bar of governance has been raised higher and higher and higher. And I can tell you this, the greatest asset a political party has, for me, or what a political party can leverage on, is the performance of its elected officials at every strata of leadership in the society. And so when you have governors elected on the platform of the party that's been able to engender good governance, has been able to change the trajectory of governance in Anambra State, has been able to at least actualize massive infrastructural development as we have witnessed in Anambra State, especially under the current administration, then you do not blame the people for trying and deciding to stick with such a party. And so there are no ifs and buts about it. Anambra is purely APGA land.
I know,
and
Barrister
that is why,
Slide,
from beginning to, I'm coming to your question.
Okay.
I needed to establish that premise. Then, the next question you ask is about the relationship between APGA and APC. It dates back to 2011, when APGA, or maybe 2010 to 2011, when APGA as a policy, under the then leadership of the party, adopted a policy that APGA aligns with the government at the center, especially when that government is performing. Especially when that government is performing. And there is absolutely nothing different from what is happening now. Now, that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the ideological foundation of the relationship between APGA and the APC. Both of these parties are progressives. And for us in APGA, we are the first under the present dispensation to be registered with the title, with the name progressive. And just like Mr. Governor has said that progressives are working together, the only thing we can do is that if we look at the ideology, looking at the manifesto of other political parties, and not just APC, if you read through very well the manifesto of a party like even Labour Party, you will see that at the core of their mandate, at the core of their manifesto, at the core of what they profess they want to do for Nigerians if elected in office is all rooted in progressivism. And we say that when we look at the ideologies of these parties, look at the ideological foundation, then there is no need these parties being at war or trying as much as possible. Yes, we know you exist as independent political parties, but we believe that the better way Nigerians can work is for political parties with the same ideological foundation.
All right,
the
so
same ideological
that has been established, Barrister Slide. That has been established. So what you're saying now is that that endorsement is a reflection of APGA's new position.
It is not a new position, like I said. I said it's not a new position.
Okay.
It is a position that dates back as far back as 2011. That APGA has immense rapport with the government at the center. If you recall, in 2011, APGA did not nominate a presidential candidate when President Goodluck Jonathan was the president of Nigeria. And in 2015, APGA also did not nominate a presidential candidate. And it was in furtherance of such relationship between APGA and the government at the center. And the current governor we have has decided, ultimately, the decision resides ultimately with the National Executive Committee at the appropriate time. But I can assure you and I can tell you that when that time comes, we are going to sit down together with the national leader of the party, review the position of the party, review the outlook of 2027 general election, and the party will come to a decision. But the most important thing we say is that we support, as a party, we support the progressive government at the center. We support the progressive policies of Mr. President. Looking at the economic transformation Mr. President is trying to engender in the country, the economic reforms and everything, APGA as a political party wholly aligns with Mr. President's economic transformation and reforms whole and entire.
Great point.
And there are no apologies about it.
Right, and I like that, Barrister Sly. But it may also be a fair point for those who say this means APGA has officially shifted ideological ground or just political pragmatism, and that if Governor Soludo is merely playing politics. Now, let me ask you this question directly. Should APGA members and supporters stop making moral or ideological arguments against APC? I think that is hypocritical. What do you think, Barrister?
Well, I don't think I quite got your question.
What I'm saying is, if you say APC, let me make an instance. If APGA members in Anambra State say, no true son of Anambra would vote for a party like APC, they do not expect that Governor Soludo would be in, I don't want to use the word good terms, would be going to Abuja, he has gone twice now, just to support an APC-led government. And I'm asking you this question because I'm sure you know APC chieftains in Anambra are not happy. You know, someone like Honorable Tony Uche-Ezekwelu, former majority whip, was here on Friday, passionately saying Governor Soludo goes to Abuja, prostrating, begging President Tinubu for endorsement. They are upset that this will hurt their chances in November, which is understandable. He was even telling me Governor Soludo didn't win the 2021 election. He says it was rigged, and that's why he has performed woefully. So how does, while you react to that, how does APGA plan to, also convince voters? I see that you're laughing, but how does APGA also, convince voters that?
I will tell you one thing. I think you have to have some thorough review of the quality of guests that you bring here, and the type of attachment you give to whatever they say here.
No. Everyone is free to say whatever they say. And it's on me. No, let me react to that. It's on me to ask whoever's been accused. Can I tell you this? All right.
No, I know. Let me tell you this. Let's start with the candidate of the APC for the November 8th governorship election. And you ask yourself, apart from the fact that Prince Nicholas Okachukwu has been nominated as the APC candidate, what else? He's not a member of APC, as far as I'm concerned.
You're the one saying that the APC has not said. You're the one saying that the APC has not said it's not a member of their party. No. You must. I think it will be better for you to understand where I'm coming from. All right.
Just last year, I had a tortuous legal battle in court that culminated in a Supreme Court judgment of November 27th. The man who was behind that entire case is the current candidate of APC for the November 8th governorship election. And you may ask yourself, why was he so obsessed with upturning the leadership of APGA? He knows that the only political party that he can use to win an election, especially the governorship election in Anambra, is APGA. And he did everything he could. He fought tooth and nail to upturn the leadership of the party. It was until he failed that he now decided, as more or less a second or a last resort option, for him to join the APC. I think it was in March or April this year. And he just found a way to buy himself the ticket of the APC. We don't have any issues with that. That is his problem. But I can tell you, in APC, the core members of the APC, the foundational members of APC, do not know who he is. And they are not supporting his candidacy. But that is an argument for another day. And so he has neither moral ground nor any justification to take any position on behalf of the APC. Apart from the fact that he's the candidate, that he knows nothing about the party. And so he cannot begin to question APGA's ideological basis for aligning with the government at the center. It is absolutely not his priority.
Many thought Paul Chukwuma should have gotten that ticket. Do you agree?
I don't know. I'm not a member of APC. They know how they do their own. But as far as I'm concerned, Prince Nicholas Okachukwu is the least of anybody to decide to criticize whatever is the relationship between APGA and APC. And let me make this point. I must make this point quite strenuously. Like I said earlier on, this is purely on ideological basis, the relationship between because when you see these people talk about Mr. Governor going to the president, look, we are talking about the governor of a state who is a constitutional member of most of the bodies created under the Constitution. He's a member of the National Economic Council of the country. And in his role, not just as the governor of Anambra State, but as a former CBN governor, who, of course, we know is an international professor of economics of repute. You cannot determine or you cannot decide for Mr. President who to align with, especially when you see someone who has come out to say, look, the economic decisions or the economic reforms that Mr. President has embarked on is actually yielding positive results. It was Governor Soludo that came out forcefully to make that point. And now, most other international organizations, including the IMF and World Bank, are now keying in to what Mr. Governor has been saying over 2 years ago. And so you look at these issues and you cannot fault the relationship he has with Mr. President. And this is purely, apart from that, of course, Mr. President has come out severally to say that, look, Professor Charles Soludo has been my friend for over 22 years. And so why will I decide for Mr. President when to see his friend and when not to see his friend? These are diversionary arguments that the APC are making because they know that they do not exist, especially Professor Chief Nicholas Okachukwu. They know that they don't exist anywhere in Anambra. APC as a political party has no councillor. They don't have a House of Assembly member. They don't have a House of Representative member. They don't have a senator. No structure absolutely anywhere in Anambra State.
All right, Barrister Stein. Now, let me go back to a question you threw at me, which I would direct back to you because, you know, my own job tonight is to ask these questions while you help me with answers. So can you highlight specific achievements of the current APGA-led government that the party will use to campaign for continuity? And precisely also because one of the promises Professor Soludo made to his people is to transform Anambra State into an industrialized and economically prosperous state. Are we there yet?
Absolutely. Now, for you to understand the crux of Mr. Governor's mandate and administration in Anambra State, I think there are some basic documents that you must look at. One is the Vision 2070, where the governor then, as the chairman of that particular committee set up by the immediate past governor of Anambra State, Chief Willie Obiano, set up that particular committee to craft a long-term vision of prosperity for Anambra State. And then you look at Mr. Governor's manifesto as well, the People's Manifesto, what we call the solution agenda for Anambra State. And then finally, you look at the report of the transition committee that was set up by the governor and the then governor of Anambra State to usher in this present administration. Now, if you study these three very vital documents, you will see one thing that is evident is the fact that this administration is built on 5 core pillars. And those core pillars are what Mr. Governor believes is what will signpost or what will actually herald the massive transformation that he wants to bring to Anambra State. And what are those 5 pillars? You look at security, law and order, you look at economic transformation, you look at human capital and social agenda. Of course, you look at governance, rule of law, and then you look at the environment and urban regeneration. Now, Mr. Governor believes, and quite rightly, that in a capitalist economy like ours, Nigeria and Anambra in particular, you will understand that what you need to drive industrialization or to drive economic activities is to set up basic foundation. That is the role of government. The role of government is, 1, provide massive infrastructure that will fuel economic activities, that will fuel investors, that will attract investors, that will attract industrialization. And believe you me, Mr. Governor has been able to achieve quite a whole lot in Anambra State. Let me take the angle of security. And I want to take security, for instance, because of the number of noise that we've heard on social media about, oh, this insecurity, this insecurity, that. And in doing this, you must do as much as possible, go back memory lane to what the position was before Mr. Governor took over, you know, the mantle of leadership in Anambra, particularly in 2020, towards the end of 2020 and 2021. What was the situation in Anambra? The situation in Anambra State was that about 8 local governments were under hostage. More than 6 or 7 local government secretariats were burned by, well, I wouldn't know whether I should call them agitators or non-state actors, as the case may be, who, for whatever reason, decided to take up arms and enter the various bushes. And now, immediately the governor came in. The first fight he engaged in was to, as much as possible, recover the state from the hands of these agitators or these non-state actors, because no meaningful economic activity can go on in an atmosphere of insecurity. And the question is, how has Mr. Governor been able to achieve this? If you go around the Anambra state, you can see economic activity going on in every part of the state. I'm not saying that the war has been 100%, no. But where we are and where we are getting to is quite far better off than where we were in 2021, which is just 3 years ago. And this has been made possible by the massive investment the governor has been able to make in securing the people of Anambra State. And in addition to this, of course, you know about the setup of the Agune Chamber and the enactment of the Homeland Security Law, which has further engendered the security that today Anambra State is far more secure than it was some 3 years ago when Mr. Governor came into office. And then you go to infrastructure. And
let's stay on that. Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that because, you know, I don't have the right words, but I do not think it would be nice for you. You're on live television. I don't think it would be nice for you to call these people agitators. They are criminals. For the record, these are criminals because they kill human beings. Now, the security of lives and property is the first constitutional obligation of any government. Having said all you have said,
absolutely.
How do you feel when you hear concerned stakeholders and proud sons of Anambra State saying Governor Soludo is sleeping on duty when it comes to security matter in Anambra State?
It is quite despicable, to say the least, for anybody except those that want to play politics. And that's why I said, for me, if you want to discuss security in Anambra, there's no way you can discuss the current security situation in Anambra without benchmarking the position in 2021. In 2021, let me use 2021 as an example. If you recall, we had a governorship election in November 2021. And of course, before the government,
some have said that it's a lazy approach to governance. Barrister Sly, some have said it's a lazy approach to governance when you see state governors continue to benchmark when it comes to security matters.
It will be unfair. It will be unfair for you to describe it as a lazy approach to governance. And I wouldn't want to even get into the constitutional issues concerning security in the country. And you begin to ask you, I'm one of those. I've come on severally on this TV station to say, if you want to put an end to insecurity in the country, then there are certain constitutional reforms that you must engender. One of those constitutional reforms that you must engender, if we even want to make that argument, is the fact that there must be need for you to decentralize the security architecture. There must be actual need, total need to decentralize the security architecture in such a way that the police of a country in a federation like Nigeria, the police has no business. The police has no business with the federal government. It is an aberration. It's not obtainable anywhere in advanced country. Use America, for example. If you go to New York, you see the New York Police Department. And so what we are supposed to have is an Anambra Police Command, an Anambra Police Department, entirely under the control of the governor. And so when you get into this point, there are so many issues around that I wouldn't want us to get into. But the fact remains that we have made tremendous progress from where we were 3 years ago. That fact is unassailable. And no matter how anybody wants to play politics around this fact, it remains unassailable that where we are today, I'm not saying that we've gotten to the point where we say, oh, of course there are crime everywhere in the world. Even in America, in London, in Belgium, everywhere in the world, there are pockets of crime everywhere. Today, there was a major mileage secured by even the government vigilante, that's the Agune Chamber Security Agency in Anambra State, that they neutralized, I think, about 4 of those unknown gunmen in Orumba North. It is a massive gain. And as the day goes by, we are securing this gain. We are securing Anambra State the more. We've not gotten to where we want to be. But have we made progress? Oh, yes. We've made tremendous progress. And then, like where I was before you, try to, go back to the security issue. And which is a very fundamental point and a fundamental fact.
Absolutely.
Is the fact that looking at the infrastructure and the economic transformation that the governor has been able to witness or engender in Anambra, and I'll equally give you an example. Because in everything I do, I will always benchmark Just like Mr. Governor will always say, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve on it. And part of measurement that you have to do in any aspect or any area of governance is that you must, as much as possible, benchmark what the position was before now. Because that is the only thing that will make you know if you've made progress or if you're actually retrogressing. If you come to infrastructure and economic transformation, before Mr. Governor came in, he actually acknowledged that the greatest challenge that Anambra State had was the poor state of the infrastructure, especially the roads. And that was why he said that upon assumption of office, he was going to declare a state of emergency on roads. And now, compared to the previous administration we've had in Anambra State, it's unprecedented that a governor in 3 years in office is constructing close to 900 kilometers of road, with over 600 already completed and asphalted, waiting to be commissioned. This is a massive win for Anambra State. And apart from that, there are so many other issues. Come to human capital and social agenda. You talk about the 1U2 skill. You talk about the free antenatal care and child maternal care for women who are pregnant, that go to public hospitals, get their delivery, including cesarean section, free of charge. You talk about the Anambra child who from nursery to secondary school attends any public school in Anambra State free of charge, unprecedented in the annals of history of Anambra State. And so many other issues.
All right, then, Barrister Sly.
Of course,
I mean, you've done well.
In recognition of this, I must mention this. In recognition of this, reputable newspapers and tabloids have come out to, of course, give Mr. Governor various awards as the best governor in the country. I didn't give that award. So when you have a reputable newspaper like Sun newspaper call Mr. Governor the Sun Governor of the Year, when you have Vanguard, you have Daily Independent, and so many other newspapers, including Champion.
And I must also say that
I didn't give Mr. Governor those awards.
I know
those awards we actually merited.
You've done well. You've done well defending your party and the governor. But you know, most of the questions I have
Jumoke, do you know the most beautiful part of all this?
All right.
That Mr. Governor has been able to achieve this in 3 years without borrowing a single kobo.
All right.
So the question on everyone's lips is,
like
how have you been able to engender this magic?
Right. And like I said, you've done well defending your party and the governor. But, you know, most of the questions I have in my head are basically for the governor. And I hope I get to speak with him before the next governorship election. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. Sadly, we're out of time. Barrister Sly SLKY is the National Chairman, All Progressives Grand Alliance. Thank you so much for your time with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.